1 week on from the disposal of Rupert Lowe from the Reform Party, and the chaos continues. We've now had, just in today, an entire branch of officers all resign from the Reform Party. This is shocking stuff, and it shows that this is actually not just something happening at the top, but something that is actually really affecting some people in the grassroots of the party. So let's have a look at this and also think about how much of an impact this Rupert Lowe saga is really going to have on the Reform Party in the long run. Will this all blow over in another week's time, or will this really break their possibility of potentially reaching number 10 in 2029. So Chris Littlewood, he tweeted this: integrity matters. Over the past 5 months, we've worked tirelessly to build a real grassroots movement for Reform UK in our constituencies. We believed in a party that stood for accountability, democracy and real change. Sadly, the actions of Reform UK's leadership have made it impossible for us to continue in good conscience. When integrity is compromised, blind loyalty is not an option. With deep regret, every officer in our branch, are resigning with immediate effect. Our full statement explains why. And so he's posted in this thread on X the letter that he has sent to the Reform Party. So it says, read the letter below. And it's quite long. I won't show you all of it, but he's really gone to town on explaining why this Rupert Lowe saga means that him and all the officers in his branch are not able to continue working for the party. And you can see there at the bottom, we've got it signed by 5 different people working at that local branch who are now all having to resign themselves from association with the Reform Party. So we won't look at all of it, but let me just show you a couple of parts of this. So he says there, we poured our hearts into structures and plans to make a major impact in our constituencies, only to see that vision crumble. Anyone who has been involved in local politics and the work that goes in those local branches there, it's often quite boring, burdensome work, dealing with emails about potholes, bin collections, public toilets, pretty dull stuff that requires a heck of a lot of work. And I have massive respect to these people, and these people here, clearly they've dedicated their time thinking that Reform are the future, but now they've changed their mind. So this is what they have to say about why Rupert Lowe's suspension has really upset them. So he says, the recent debacle entirely of your making, involving Rupert Lowe MP's suspension on March 7th over unproven claims, followed by dementia smear rumours by March 9th, and the utterly spurious, disgraceful weaponisation of the legal system in reporting him to the police on March 6th, a day after his Telegraph critique for alleged threats from December 13th, an 84-day delay that reeks of retaliation, was the catalyst for our joint resignation. Worse, Richard Tice confirmed on GB News on March 9th that Lowe would not regain the whip, even if the claims were proven false, exposing this as a premeditated purge, not a pursuit of justice. Played out disgracefully over the weekend, this act of self-harm towards the party leaves your grassroots associations to defend, explain and justify. Such arrogance, dishonesty and fragile autocracy is unbecoming of you, Mr. Yusuf. There's also talk in this letter about how these local associations, they are really just having to figure things out for themselves. There's no real direction from the top of the party. As we know, this is a brand new party that is at this point still quite disorganised. Z Yusuf has been trying to organise the party more, and hence you've now got local associations rather than just a few people in Westminster doing all of the work. But there is a heck of a lot to do, and hence there are also a lot of frustrations about that from these people. But the main catalyst, as it says here, was the disposal of Rupert Lowe, and they clearly think that report to the police being put in supposedly right after Rupert Lowe spoke with Andrew Pearce and went to the press about his concerns about the leadership of the party. They seem to think that that is very suspicious. So this is pretty damning of them. It goes on. The criticisms of the party in this letter, as I said, I won't read it all to you, but to lose that, 5 people all in one branch, every single one walking out, it's pretty shocking, to be honest. So this seems to suggest that this is not something that is just contained to Westminster, this disposal of Rupert Lowe, that it has shaken some other people. But on the other hand, we had polling asking members of the public and Reform voters whether they know Rupert Lowe, and apparently in one poll 71% of Reform voters said they didn't even know who Rupert Lowe was. So you and I, we're probably both people who are engaged in politics and we know the people in the party, we know what's going on, but your average Joe, your average member of the public who votes but isn't really that interested in politics, they think, sick of the Tories and Labour, Reform sound like they've got a good idea, Nigel Farage seems cool, I'll vote for them. Those are the kind of people who maybe this doesn't affect them, they don't care about this. And we had some quite exciting polling come out I know there have been a lot of polls, but this is not a YouGov poll for the whole country. This is specifically a poll for the Runcorn by-election, which is going to be coming up. Reform are going to be tested in the polls. We know we have local elections coming up, but this is an actual by-election for an MP's seat. Of course, Mike Amesbury, who got in trouble for punching a constituent. Very naughty boy. And shockingly, Reform are leading in a poll that has been done by Lord Ashcroft, who generally has quite a good reputation when it comes to polling. So you see, we've got General election July 2024 on the left there, and you can see that this was a very safe Labour seat. That red bar is absolutely huge. 53% Reform. Yes, they did come second, but they were trailing far behind. But look how the tables have turned since then. So you can see by-election weighted by likelihood to vote, we get 40% and 35%, the Reform Party being 5 points ahead of Labour there. And then of those who said they were certain to vote, we can see Reform even further ahead, 42% versus 33%, a 9% lead on the Labour Party, the Conservatives trailing very far behind on only 11% in that one. So this poll, I'm not actually sure the exact date that this was taken, but it's just come out, so presumably I would like to think it's been done over the past week. This is suggesting that actually Reform, they're still zooming up in the polls despite what's happened to Rupert Lowe. And we have had various other polls that have been conducted over the past week after the Rupert Lowe saga that have all been putting, many of them putting Reform in the lead, 27%, 25%, either neck and neck with Labour or slightly ahead of Labour. So things in terms of the polling still seem to be going okay for them. The average member of the public doesn't seem to be too worried about this, at least not yet. But interestingly, this happened on Sky News, where a farmer who is, say, a typical member of the public, not super involved in politics, he brought up the Rupert Lowe saga and said what he thinks it's going to do to his likelihood to vote for Reform. Take a listen to this.
But then, unprompted, this happened. A reference to the row between suspended Reform MP Rupert Lowe and the party leadership.
I follow Rupert on Twitter or X, whatever you call it, and I look at it. Look, I don't follow politics avidly, but I just look and I just think, this man's full of common sense, and I really like him. And then I just see I don't really know what has happened, but it just looks from a complete outsider's point of view. He's just been chucked under the bus, and I'm like, am I getting second thoughts about Reform?
Spats happen all the time. It just looks worse when it's a smaller party because there's less of them, so it's more noticeable. This will blow over, but Reform will keep getting strong.
How concerned are you about the infighting?
Look, I was in the Conservative Party for all those years, and It was infighting on steroids, wasn't it, really? I was probably partly to blame calling PMs to resign. But I'm putting it into perspective, actually, Beth.
It's more than a spat, though.
Yeah,
it's more than a spat.
I mean, clearly it's a big falling out. There's concerns on both sides. Politicians and media, we might spend a lot of time on X and on social media, but it doesn't always cut through to the general public.
I mean, the fact that someone raised it unprompted. I didn't raise Rupert Lowe this morning.
No.
And he said, I'm concerned about it. It's like you left the Conservative Party to an outfit that was meant to do politics differently, and now they look like they're all fighting like rats in a sack.
Look, I can see what it looks like, Beth, and I'm not one to mince my words. It doesn't look great, agreed. You know, this has got to have its day. I don't want to see it in the news any more days. We've got to actually focus on winning now.
So there we go. We had Beth Rigby from Sky News there challenging Andrea Jenkins to explain not necessarily the details of what has gone on with Rupert Lowe, but whether this matters for the party, whether this affects the party's reputation of integrity, and whether it will cut through to ordinary voters. As Beth said, that was unprompted that farmer in that pub decided to bring up Rupert Lowe, and he seemed like an ordinary guy who says, look, I don't know exactly what's gone on, but from a normal person, this is making me question my support for the party. It's definitely ruffled some people's feathers, but you'll have a lot of people who, yes, this has ruffled their feathers, but they think, well, what are the other options? Am I going to go back to the Tories? Well, they're not any better. As Andrea Jenkins has said there, the Tories, it was infighting on steroids, as she said. So going back to the Tories doesn't really feel like an option. And then what are you going to do? Go back to Labour? I mean, I know Keir Starmer's done a little bit well over the past few days, said a few good things, saying he's going to scrap NHS England and he's going to increase defence spending, but I doubt that there are many Reform supporters who, after the Rupert Lowe saga, will be off to vote for the Labour Party and Sir Keir Starmer. So I don't think that this will have a huge impact in the long run, but you know, time will tell. Let's see what happens. Let's look at some more polls that come out. Interesting stuff. Let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think that the Rupert Lowe saga is going to harm the Reform Party? And will this affect you personally, who you're going to vote for at the next general election or in the local elections? Anyway, I'm Chloe Dobbs. Thank you very much for watching. Just subscribe below if you haven't already. See you next time.